Well, hey, good afternoon, folks. This is Bill Costanzo, Livestock Guardian Dog Program Specialist with AgriLife Extension. Um, while we're kind of waiting for everybody to get let in at the room and anybody that might be coming in last here. Um, I do want to thank our sponsors for the field day, or excuse me, for the webinar. Um, Lone Star Tracking, if you're looking for any GPS tracking needs, I would encourage you to reach out to Lone Star Tracking. We've been using Lone Star since, gosh, I think 2020 or 2019 at this point. Um, Spot On Fence is a sponsor of our webinars. If you're looking for a virtual fence caller, reach out to Spot On Fence and they can get you set up with one of those. And also want to thank both Robert Pritz and Danielle Valdez for their help getting the webinar set up for us today. Some just kind of one quick housekeeping thing. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those in the chat. We will get to all of those at the end of the webinar. And so I think we've got everybody that's going to come in. With that, I'm going to go ahead and read some background information about our presenter. So Kristal and her husband Glenn operate a ranch in Mills County along with their daughter Alex. They raise fine wool sheep, Angora goats, Spanish goats, and cattle. They've been using and breeding registered Akbash Kangal dogs for 19 years at their current location. Glenn and Kristal use their dogs in combination with lethal control measures as part of their predator control program. Kristal grew up near Llano, Texas, where her family raised Angora goats. Her parents first got into livestock guardian dogs in the early 1980s. They got their first Akbash in 1987, and at that point, that breed changed their world forever. Over the next several years, they adopted registered Akbash dogs that had failed in pet homes. They bonded them to livestock, and they all worked like they had been raised with livestock. In the early 2000s, Kristal's dad bought his first breeding pair of registered Akbash and started raising them. Shortly after, Kristal joined the Akbash Dog Association and has been a board member for many years. Kristal was also a founding member of the Texas Livestock Guardian Dog Association and served as a board member from 2020 until 2024. And thank you for that service, Kristal. We're going to get into our webinar today on the Akbash breed. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kristal.
Thank you, Bill, for this opportunity to speak about the Akbash dog, and thank you for all you people, for all of you that are here today. The photo on the screen is some Akbash dogs that was taken at my dad's place. My family just really fell in love with the Akbash dog a long time ago, and it's just been a tried and true breed for us. Um, Even though we really didn't start breeding the dogs until the early 2000s. The first 10 years that we had the dogs, we had only 2 litters in those 10 years, but it wasn't until later that we actually made a concerted effort to breed registered dogs. Nomads and pastoralist herding livestock dogs migrated from Central Asia, which is now modern day Kazakhstan, through the Middle East, up into Turkey, and then into Europe. And they brought with them their guard dogs and their hunting dogs, and this is kind of how breeds got dispersed as people kept traveling westwards. And we can see in this slide here where the different stars represent different livestock guardian dogs that are spread out along this same route. And once they got to where they were going, started developing the specific breeds that we have today. In Turkey, they recognize the Akbash dog, Kongal dog, and Kars dog as being the 3 native livestock guardian dogs there. The Akbash dog was developed primarily in the region around Ankara, Eskişehir, and Afyon, and going down into the province of Konya. The Kongal dog was developed primarily in the Sivas Kongal district, and the Kars dog in the far northeast corner in the province of Kars. The three dogs do look distinctly different from one another. Here we have just a typical Akbash dog, medium-coated Akbash dog in Turkey. And this is a very typical Congo dog. They're heavier muscled and definitely a different color than your Akbash dog. And then this is a very typical Kars dog in these two photos. They can be different colors, but they are all coated very similar to these dogs that you see in the picture here. The first mentions of livestock guardian dogs in Turkey was done in Evliya's Book of Travels. Evliya himself lived from about 1611 to 1683, and he traveled all over Turkey, the Middle East, and even as far as Egypt for about 40 of those years, and documenting a lot of stuff along his way. And he did document the shepherd's dogs, citing that they chase the eagle in the air, the crocodile in the rivers, and are an excellent breed of well-trained dogs. He also noted that the shepherds took good specific care so far as the purity of the breed, and they weren't just mongrel dogs or whatever, but they were quite proud of them, and that also they were the shepherd's constant companions, stating that the shepherds look on these dogs as their companions and brethren and have no objection to eating out of the same dish with them. So these weren't random dogs. They were very proud of them and obviously closely connected to their dogs, as can be seen in this photo taken by David Nelson. Obviously a close relationship between this shepherd and his Akbash dog. Turkey has a long history with feral dogs, pariah dogs, as seen in this 18th century drawing from an unknown artist of an Ottoman man feeding feral cats and dogs. And the reason I'm talking about this is because of the pariah dogs. There's probably an aspect of the Akbash dog's behavior was in response to the sheer number of pariah dogs, feral dogs, that there were in Turkey and still are. This is a photo from David Nelson's book, and it shows a collection of pariah dogs. Photo was taken by a guy named Amicus. His book titled Constantinople in 1896. Amicus stated that they're almost all of the Mastiff breed, spotted with strange colors, a horrible race of mongrels. And they filled the cities as well as the countryside. This is just another photo, and this is something that the Akbash dog was developed within this kind of environment with these dogs, and it led to certain behavioral behavioral tendencies. The traveling naturalist Anthony Buxton wrote about the differences, though, between the shepherd's dogs and the pariah dogs. These dogs, being the shepherd dogs, were the only privately owned dogs in the country, where normally a dog is a pariah and nobody's property. And I think this is significant in that the Akbash dog was not just a random dog. The shepherds had close relationships with them. They took care to their purity, and it's been going on for hundreds of years, not just recently. Other dogs from Turkey. In 1968, a Lieutenant Ballard that was stationed in Turkey, he had his home and car vandalized, and he asked around, what do I do about this? And everybody said, get a dog from the village. So he bought Zorba. The dog in the photo you see here is the founding sire for the Anatolian Shepherd breed. Before returning home, they bought another dog, Pecky. The reason I'm talking about the Anatolian Shepherds is because over all the years, there has always been a lot of confusion. Uh, the Anatolian Shepherd Dog People Club like to say that all the dogs from Turkey were Anatolian Shepherds. And for my own family in the early 80s, when we started using the Akbash dogs, we already had Pyrenees and Anatolians, and we could see right away that they were very different from our Anatolians and our Pyrenees. They were a distinctly different, the Akbash was a distinctly different breed of dog. But a confusion between dogs from Turkey persisted for years, and the Anatolian Shepherd Dog Club was at kind of at the head of it, um, in a way to promote their own dogs. And this is the first litter that Zorba and Pecky had here in the United States. The Anatolian Shepherd dog today can still be any, according to their breed standard, can be any color. They can also have any type hair coat, where the Akbash and Congo dogs both have very specific colorations. In A.F. Townsend's book in 1910, he talks about very large whitish collies, but with shorter hair, and they are very savage to a stranger. And this is when he's staying in villages traveling across Turkey. But yet at the same time, the smallest child that the dogs know will suffice to pacify the dogs. So he said you always had to have someone help you through the village that knew the dogs. Anyway, and this is actually typical behavior of an Akbash dog, is that they do act kind of vicious towards a stranger or something they're not familiar with. The name Akbash was first noted in a book written in 1947. The Sheep and the Chevrolet was the name of the book. In the book, as they're traveling along, they encounter a big group of livestock. Well, they can hear the dogs coming, and their guide is telling them that the mountain dogs are all called either Karabash, meaning they have a black head, or Akbash, white-headed, according to their coat. So this is the first mention of the name Akbash long before foreigners started making a concerted effort to import or export dogs from Turkey, whether it was the Anatolians or Akbash or the Congo dogs. So the name is of a Turkish origin, not from foreigners. We have a huge debt that we owe both Judy and David Nelson for their work with the Akbash dog. And it began with their first trip to Turkey, their first time they were stationed in Turkey. But we owe them a lot for the work that they did in Turkey, and then once they came back to the United States. Judy and David had already, because of David's work with the State Department, they had lived in Germany and in the Netherlands, and then they were stationed in Turkey in about 1975. Once they got settled in at Ankara, they wanted to have a home kind of out in the country, a place they could go and have family time. And they found that house in Balakdama. Balakdama was pretty remote, and everybody that lived there was a shepherd. And so this was a very common scene for Judy and David and their family to see on a regular basis, as the shepherds moving their flocks around in the area. And they got to see these large, white, majestic dogs on a very regular basis. And they were just very curious about if this is a specific breed of dog, or if it was, just there, if it was specific. And so they actually conducted their own test litter. in Turkey. While they were still living there, David actually leased this shepherd, his flock, and his dogs in order to have a test litter of pups to see if they would breed true to the parents that David was seeing. And the Nelsons, for their work for these, and this was not the only test litter they did. They actually did a good many test litters between different shepherds, different dogs. And David would take some of these puppies and he would give them to other shepherds in the area and tell them, well, I'm going to come back later and get pups from you. So it was a way to actually help get the shepherds involved in the breeding of their own dogs. The first Akbash dog import was in 1978 when the Nelsons returned home to the U.S. They brought back with them Cybele Whitebird. She was one of the pups out of the first test litter that we just saw. Cybele wound up traveling the world over with them in her lifetime, but her first litter was whelped here in the U.S. She came from Turkey in whelp to this dog here. His name was Akbash, meaning white bird, I believe is what it means. But anyway, Akbash never left Turkey. He remained there. When the Nelsons returned in 1978 with Cybele, they brought back with them the breed standard from Turkey. And the breed standard was a document outlining what the Akbash dog looked like in its physical appearance, and then it's also its behavioral characteristics. And David and Judy interviewed numerous shepherds. They had officials from the local area to sign this document. It was a document approved of by the Turkish people themselves that yes, this is what the Akbash dog looks like and the way it behaves. And the Nelsons over the years took care to bring back as many unrelated dogs as possible from different villages. And the breed clubs were shortly founded in 1978 and 79. The Akbash Dog Association International and the Akbash Dog Association of America. Eventually, the ADAA would be the primary registration club because most of the registrations were being done in the U.S. and not internationally. In 1980, the USDA purchased their first Akbash dogs to use in the USDA Akbash Dog Program. The dogs joined the Great Pyrenees and Commodore breeds that were already in USDA studies. The dogs purchased by the USDA included both imported as well as American-born Akbash dogs. Pictured here are Judy and David Nelson and their two daughters. This particular presentation of the pups happened at a DC press conference with the pups being presented to Robert Berglund, the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture at the time. So again, the Nelsons weren't passing dog fanciers. They were dedicated. They dedicated their lives to this breed, and they were dedicated to getting this dog out there and into working situations. And working with USDA really helped make that happen for a lot of us. And this is David Nelson pictured here with Otto Whitebird. He was one of the first U.S.-born Akbash dogs. The Akbash dog was first used and studied at the sheep station in Idaho. The dog in the photo is a registered Akbash dog whose name was Kaplan, and he graced the cover of this particular USDA study. From there, some of these dogs went to the Jornada Experimental Range in New Mexico. They continued breeding the purebred dogs. They they kind of lapsed on some of their registration, and Tamara Taylor and the ADAA actually were able to go back and re-register some of these dogs and kind of save some of those genetics. And from the Horonata experimental range, they went the same bloodlines of Akbash dogs went to the Corona Range and Livestock Research Center. Years later, my dad would actually have one or two of these dogs that came from the Corona Range. This study, there were a lot of studies done on the Akbash dog, and including the Akbash dog. Anyway, they all pointed to positive information about the breed, and that they were a really good breed to use. In this study here done by Amhelt, the Akbash dog was proven to be more effective than Great Pyrenees to deter predation, more effective than Commodores to deter all predators, more aggressive, active, intelligent, and faster than Great Pyrenees, and they were more aggressive, attentive, trustworthy, active, and faster than Commodores. And in my own family's experience, because it's shortly after the dogs were at the sheep experiment station in Idaho that we got our first dogs in 1987. And they were hands down far different than the Anatolians and the Great Pyrenees that we had at the time. The Great Pyrenees had helped stop the coyote predation, but neither the Pyrenees nor the Anatolians were aggressive enough towards the feral hogs that we had, and we still have them. But anyway, we did see that the Akbash dog was more effective at deterring predation. They were more aggressive towards predators, as you can see in this photo with a dead hog. They were more athletic and faster. They could cover ground at the drop of a hat. They could be hundreds of yards away. But also they were more trustworthy and more attentive with their livestock than the Pyrenees and the Anatolian. And even 1987, and even years later, even into 96, when we had already had our dogs for about 10 years, still the confusion persisted about the Anatolian Shepherd being the same as the Akbash dog, and they really weren't. We could see at home with the livestock and with the dogs that they were definitely two different breeds. And in 1996, the International Symposium on Turkish Shepherd Dogs took place in Konya, Turkey. This was a really big deal. It was the first scientific conference on Turkish Shepherd dogs. To be invited to speak there and even attend it was a big deal. Attendees included James Serpell, who's written numerous books on dogs and dog behavior, Jeffrey Green, who participated in numerous USDA studies using Akbash dogs, Raymond Coppinger, David Nelson, and Tamara Taylor. The results of the meeting is that everyone supported the views of the Turkish scientists and the Turkish people regarding the native Turkish dog breeds. That yes, there are multiple native Turkish breeds of dogs, specifically livestock guardian dogs. They are not known collectively as the Anatolian Shepherd. So the confusion, this is 96, the confusion is still persisting that the Anatolian Shepherd is known, all livestock guardian dogs from Turkey are known collectively as this. So it was still persisting, which led Turkey in 2013 to conduct this DNA study, mitochondrial DNA, to estimate the genetic relatedness among these dog breeds. These breeds were the Turkish Greyhound, the Congo, Akbash, and the Kars Shepherd dog. They included the Turkish Greyhound because the Turkish Greyhound is nearly always found with these breeds, with the shepherds. So they included it in the study also. And the results showed that the Akbash, Congal, and Kars Shepherd dogs were distinctly different population, but also so was the Turkish Greyhound. Therefore, the generalized grouping of Turkish Shepherd dogs into a single breed called Anatolian is not correct. Fast forward a good many years, and just a few years ago, the FCI, which is a international dog registry, after years of persisting and with wanting Turkey to recognize the Anatolian Shepherd as a native livestock guardian dog, and Turkey telling them no every year, the FCI finally relented, and the FCI actually unregistered the Anatolian Shepherd dog on their registry, in their registry. The Anatolian Shepherd is now only recognized by the UKC and the AKC registries here in the United States. An Akbash dog, as far as his size, he's slightly longer in proportion than he is tall. They have a wedge-shaped head. They have pendant ears and a long tail. It's curled over the back when moving or excited. Now, some of the dogs have a lot tighter curl to their tail than others. It's not a big deal that the dog has to have a tightly curled tail over his back when excited. That's not necessarily something that's terribly important. The Akbash dog is a mix of Mastiff and Gazehound physical qualities. You can see the Gazehound physical qualities in its long legs, its deep chest, and tucked up flank. The Mastiff qualities can be seen in their broad head, their height, weight, and the overall impression of power, as seen in this female dog here. Again, the Akbash dog is wedge-shaped. They have a little bit longer, thinner muzzle than some of the other dogs. It tapers gradually down to the nose. Their cheeks are flat and smooth. They have a slight stop to their head, and the stop is where the muzzle and the skull meets. That's the stop. Anyway, it's very slight. The muzzle is roughly parallel to the top of the skull. The lips are black or dark brown, and the flews are tight. And the flews is the area around the lips and stuff like that. Pyrenees tend to have a lot more, have larger flews that are not so tight. And the whiskers are white. And you can see with this dog's around his eyes and his nose, the pigmentation is black. The pigmentation is supposed to be black or a dark liver brown. The puppy on the left is obviously having pigment issues, with a good bit of pink on the end of the nose, which is not an acceptable quality for the breed, and for obvious health reasons. The puppy on the right, even at the young age, has very good pigment around its eyes and nose, and it's quite black. And you can notice the very dark eye rims. And two, the eye rims are tight. The puppy on the left has loose eye rims, which is not a good quality. The breeding that produced the puppy on the left shouldn't probably be repeated ever again. And that puppy, of course, should be neutered and not bred with. The hair coat of the Akbash dog is always white. They can have some yellowing along the back, which comes from a sunburned coat, but the overall color should always be white. They can have a slight biscuit coloring to the ears, as seen in this female dog here. Some of the dogs have the biscuit coloring, some don't. It's not a bad thing if they don't have it, but it's permissible to have the biscuit coloring on the ears. The skin can have a dark pigment, but it's not necessarily a requirement. Like all the other livestock guardian dogs, the Akbash dog is double coated. They have a dense, soft, dense undercoat. But what I've found is that it sheds very easily. I've actually haven't had any problem, very few problems with my dogs shedding their undercoat quickly. This is the hair coat that's most common and that most people are familiar with. And whereas we a lot of times call this a short coat, it is technically called a referred to as a medium coat. But the Akbash dog also can be long coated, as seen in this dog here. Notice the feathering on the tail and the longer hairs on the backs of the front and back legs, and then the ruff that's around his neck and behind his ears. This is not a hair coat anywhere near similar to the Great Pyrenees. Once they shed their undercoat, it's just a long, slick guard hair that's on top. I've had numerous long coat Akbash dogs over the years. That has not been a problem with them in the heat or shedding the undercoat. As seen in this picture, two long-coated Akbash dogs, male and a female. You can see the size differences in the male between the male and the female. Males are typically 30 to 34 inches tall with an average weight of 120. Females 28 to 32 inches and with an average weight of 90. And that's kind of been my experience as far as the size of the breed. I haven't had very many males that reached 120. Most of them, I mean, if they're athletic, out there working, covering lots of ground, they don't necessarily ever get as heavy as 120. But anyway, and certainly very much heavier than that is just not necessarily the breed stand true, true to the breed. The Akbash dog's temperament is calm, quiet, and steady, which I believe to be very true to the breed. They're loyal, gentle, and affectionate, and especially growing up in a family, like a family farm, or even, your home, they can actually be they're very loyal to the affectionate to the people that they know. They are independent natured. My own family always kind of joked that it was like trying to convince a house cat to do something. But at the same time, they are capable of learning basic commands. My dogs, my dogs all, come, no, and then, a couple of other commands. Anyway, but they're quite smart. Other behavioral characteristics is that they are aloof and suspicious of strangers. And sometimes people can be taken aback by the dog running towards you and barking and maybe even growling, that it looks kind of vicious or whatever, but they never get so close as to bite. And they display a protective behavior at a young age. Even pups that are quite young will start barking at sounds that they think are suspicious and people that they don't recognize right away. Probably one of the behavioral traits that I like or admire the most in the Akbash dog breed is the fact that they are genetically predisposed to be bite inhibited. As you can see in the photo, this dog is obviously fearful of the man that's holding the robe. And I've actually had some experiences with some Akbash dogs that were not as properly socialized as they should have been, but still you could handle them and do stuff with them and not have a fear of being bitten by the dog. If this was a border collie or a German shepherd, they probably wouldn't mind, going ahead and getting a bite in at all. But the Akbash dog, the bite inhibition that is genetically predisposed in the Akbash is a trait that I really admire and love most about them. The posturing, Akbash dogs have a tendency to do a lot of posturing, which includes barking also, but the stiff front legs, growling, and it's just part of their threatening behavior towards predators and suspicious, strangers. They, I don't think the Akbash dog barks as much as some of the other breeds. I've found that my dogs generally they bark at stuff they see. They don't necessarily bark at the unseen. Um, and they do like to do a good bit of fence fighting, as you can see in this photo here. These two girls are getting kind of excited about what's across the fence from them. Okay. The Akbash dog, one of its behavioral characteristics is that it is dog aggressive, meaning it doesn't like other canines. And this is where we go back to the pariah dog. With so many pariah dogs, feral dogs in Turkey, they were, of course, a predator to the shepherds, sheep, and goats. And I think this is why the Akbash dog is dog aggressive, is because it was developed with the pariah dog as a predator in its environment. Now, this dog aggressive behavior can be displayed and go as far as your neighbor's dogs walking up and down the road, feral dogs, wild canids, and this can even include your own dogs. There are the dog aggressive behavior for some people is where they have problems. Um, Especially if they have a lot of pet dogs or other dogs just running around on the farm. The Akbash dog is going to want to be the one that's in charge of everything. And for some people that can be a problem. And whereas it is problematic, I think we just need to be better at learning how to manage our dogs. And I know that I've had to get better about managing my own dogs in order to prevent fights amongst the dogs themselves here. But I do appreciate the fact that they are dog aggressive because I think it helps with their overall aggressiveness towards predators in general. But for small farms with lots of other pet dogs, the Akbash dog being dog aggressive means that you're just going to have to be on your toes, and everybody has to have set rules and boundaries. I have a herding dog, but he has boundaries. The Akbash dogs have boundaries. And I'm there and I don't leave dogs unsupervised. He's my herding dog has his boundaries, but I don't leave them unsupervised because of what could develop. Akbash dogs do bond easily to a variety of livestock. I don't have any photos of it here, but anyway, they've even been used with wildlife as well. But small pens with similarly sized livestock, no vulnerable livestock, kept in close proximity to their livestock, they do bond really easily and quickly. And in these photos, we see two young dogs showing correct submissive behavior to their livestock. Socialization is important for all dogs, and especially for our livestock guardian dogs. And socialization is specifically the relationship that we have with our dog. Bonding is the relationship that the dog has with their sheep. And socialization starts early in the nest, handling the puppies, holding them on their back like this, petting them, and getting them used to being around people, sounds and smells of people. The Akbash dog is quite good with children. Um, our kids and grandkids need to be safe on the farm or at our homes. And we need to be able to have some control over the dog, and that's what socialization and training does for them. So is importing dogs from Turkey the answer? Yes and no. It has its own pitfalls. First of all, I'd encourage you to do an extensive amount of research on just the regulations of exporting dogs, but yet importing dogs into the US. It is going to be expensive, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. And then you might get a dog that looks like this dog in the picture. Obviously, not a breeding quality dog. There are really good, nice dogs in Turkey. But what are you going to do? How are you going to seek restitution when you have this dog? How are you going to breed with this dog? It's difficult. We have a lot of good dogs here in the United States, but utilizing the genetics to the best that we can in the small gene pool that we have is probably a better way of supporting and improving the breed, is working with what we have here. We do have probably fewer than 1,000 registered purebred Akbash dogs here in the United States. We do not have a large gene pool. Everyone likes to say, my dog is an Akbash. Is my white dog an Akbash dog? And the answer is there's no way to know. We can guess all day long, but we won't know. DNA tests aren't conclusive to parentage. Embark states that on their website, that even though your test may come back saying your dog is 100% something or other, that a registry isn't going to register your dog based on a DNA test. Papers are what prove purity in a dog. And the purity equals predictable traits. The traits that we've just gone through, the physical and behavioral traits in registered purebred dogs, they are predictable. And that's what makes them appealing to a lot of people, is that they want those traits. They don't have to guess what the dog is going to turn out to be. When the last individual of a race of living things breathes no more, another heaven and another earth must pass before such a one can be again. If we don't preserve the livestock guardian dog breeds we have here in the U.S., including the Akbash dog, all we'll be left with is someone's idea of what that breed is. Years ago, it would have been in the early 2000s, before we started breeding purebred Akbash dogs. My dad lost his last young Akbash dog, and he went to the Livestock Weekly and started calling people about guard dog puppies for sale. And there was one advertisement. They had Akbash puppies. So Dad set a time and date with the guy to show up and look at his puppies. My dad got there, and there were 2 white puppies, there were 2 brown puppies, and there were 2 black and white puppies. There was a white mama dog, a brown daddy dog, and a border collie running around. My dad commented to the man that these aren't Akbash dogs. And the man answered him saying, this is what we call Akbash dogs out west. My dad did go ahead and buy the 2 white puppies, but they wound up not working out. He lost them. So it's important that we preserve the breeds we have. And I'd like to make some clarifications here. A lot of people say that registries ruin dogs, and therefore you don't want a registered breed of dog. A registry records pedigrees. That is what they do, first and foremost. They host conformation shows where dogs are exhibited and they are judged against their breed conform. They're breed, judged against their breed standards. Registries also host hunting competitions. The United Kennel Club was formed originally for the hunting competitions and registering and preserving the hunting breeds that were being developed in the U.S. at the time. Registries do have a breeder code of ethics. Those code of ethics can include that you keep accurate records, breed to improve the breed, and be factual and honest. United Kennel Club and American Kennel Club are the two national registries that we have here. The American Kennel Club does not recognize the Akbash dog, only the United Kennel Club. A breed club, as in the Akbash Dog Association, Congo Dog Club, Great Pyrenees, Maremma, Commodore. These are all breed clubs. Breed clubs is comprised of a group of individuals who are passionate about their breed. They are also the guardian of the breed standard. The breed standard is what we just went through earlier. It is the physical description of the breed as well as the behavioral description of the breed. Breed standards are not easily changed or manipulated. It has to go through committees. Breed clubs are led by a constitution, bylaws, and a board of directors. Breed club is comprised of dog owners as well as breeders. Breed clubs promote responsible dog ownership and the education of the public on their breed. Breeders ruin breeds. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about cattle, sheep, goats, horses, chicken, turkeys, or dogs. Breeders are the individuals that either with or without purpose select or allow animals to reproduce. The purpose of breeding should always be to improve, and it doesn't matter whether it's dogs or livestock. A breeder must know what makes an ideal animal. They must look to a breed standard. Animal selection is solely up to the breeder. I raise registered Akbash dogs. UKC is not standing over me watching me select the two dogs to make a mating. I have to do that with the information I have provided to me through the breed standard and through the association of a breed club. So the registries aren't the problem. It really is breeders, and breeders can ruin crossbred dogs as well. If you don't know what you're looking at and you're just breeding dogs in order to monetize them, you could be merely just breeding animals that are just unfit for anybody else to use, or that they'll have a longevity or a long, healthy life that they could enjoy. The future of the breed depends upon us, whether or not we continue having a breed that is trustworthy, attentive to livestock, protective of livestock, aggressive towards predators, versatile to be used with just about any type of livestock or even wildlife. It all depends upon us. And I guess, are there any questions at this time?
Well, Kristal, I think we've got some in the chat over here. One of the questions is bite inhibition toward all animals.
The bite inhibition has mostly to do with people. Um, if if you're referring to biting livestock, um, I mean, all puppies will play with something until they're taught not to play with it. But the bite inhibition I'm referring to in here is specifically towards people. Turkey themselves have had a long-standing rule about dogs biting people, and that there is no second chance after a dog bites a person. That's it. So shepherds maintained a close watch on their dogs. Any dog that offered to bite a person, they were not kept around. It was a serious issue in Turkey to allow your dog to bite an individual. So that's what the main thing with bite inhibition is, reference to people.
Next question, is using frozen semen from turkey an option to increase genetic diversity?
It certainly could be an option. Um, I'm not sure of the logistics of getting frozen semen from Turkey to the United States, and um, I mean it's certainly a thing, but getting it here and having a viable semen is probably going to be an issue. Um, it's risky. I mean, and you very well could pay thousands of dollars to get semen here, and it's not viable. And then what do? You're out the money and no semen.
This is one question. Oh, they're wondering if you could put the second references slide up again that you had.
Let me see.
Okay. And then, another question came in here. Would you be able to, either send me your slideshow and I can make a PDF to send out to folks, or do you have a PDF you can send me that I can email out to everybody?
Mm, Possibly, if you wouldn't mind sending me an email in reference to this.
I can definitely
Uh,
do that. Do we have any other questions, folks? Um, they were also wondering if you can go back to the first imported female slide. There she is. Any other questions, folks? Okay, so here's one. If the Akbash dog is dog aggressive, any suggestions on how to integrate it with an existing livestock guardian dog?
it depends on whether it's an adult dog or a puppy. It would, of course, be easier to introduce a puppy another breed to another breed of dog on a farm. Um, our very first Akbash dog that we got, she was actually 18 months old when we got her. The people were getting rid of her because she would not stop killing the neighbor dogs. Um, so we got her, we bonded her to livestock, and we already had several. We had Great Pyrenees and Anatolians. But anyway, the first time we turned her out with all the livestock and all the dogs, she whipped everybody. And that was kind of the end of it. Everybody let her be in charge, and she was. But it's not easy. It's not easy to introduce an older Akbash to already existing dynamic of dogs. I would suggest getting a puppy instead of an older dog. Um, Keeping them across the fence from one another doesn't necessarily, for a period of time, doesn't necessarily work either, because the Akbash dog fights the fence, has a tendency to fight the fence, and just kind of makes it worse. But anyway, I would suggest getting a puppy or keep them separate. I have numerous female dogs that they just they are in pastures by themselves with their livestock because they cannot get along with anybody else. That's just the way it is sometimes with this breed.
Hey, any other questions, folks? Well, I don't see any more here. So I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap up our Akbash webinar for today. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, Lone Star Tracking and Spot On Fence. Um, we have a question here, came in real quick. So what do you do if you need to run several dogs together? Use neutered males?
That using neutered males, and you can even using some neutered females mixed in there would probably work, but a bunch of neutered males would probably be a really good way to handle that. Um, the intact males, especially if they are a stud dog, would have a tendency to want to fight other males. And female dogs, intact female dogs tend to be more aggressive than neutered females as far as dog on dog aggression. So keeping intact dogs separated, and I run some of my dogs, intact females, with a neutered male, and they seem to get along pretty well. Um, but a bunch of neutered males would probably be best. That's a good solution.
Other questions, folks? Well, I think that's all. Several people said thank you. It was very informative webinar. So I appreciate you taking some time out, Kristal, to do this for us today. Oh, again, folks, our sponsors were Lone Star Tracking and Spot On Fence for these webinars this year. And our next webinar will be in November. And Dr. Catherine Lord will be talking about her most recent DNA project that she has going on. And yes, this will be posted to YouTube probably in the next couple days as soon as I get a copy of it from our support crew at the center. So again, thank you, Kristal. Appreciate the time.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for logging in today. And if you do have any other questions about the webinar, feel free to get a hold of me at the AgriLife Center. I can forward those on to Kristal. And I'll send you an email, Kristal, about getting a copy of this to send out to the folks that were asking as well. So.
Okay.
Okay, folks. Well, hey, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time in November. Bye-bye.